Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to be not brief but swift because I'm interested in hearing what we need to do now. I keep wondering what we should be doing. So I'm mostly interested on hearing what our great speakers will have to tell us. It's good that we have Elisenda from Barcelona, and thank you as well to the Scottish speakers. And just say, once again, thank you very much to all the Scottish people that have so warmly supported my case and not so, enthusiastically supporting the Catalan case. And thank you to all the Catalans that, took a few days of their vacation time to come over here and to support me. So thank you.
Speaking with Elisenda and Clara, and you have to know a little secret about the three of us. We're all economists, so tonight the economists out wrote the lawyers. The second proud moment of my life, in 2016, before the October referendum, of course the Spanish state had started to move to repress the independence movement. And Carme Forcadell had been indicted, a speaker of the Catalan Parliament, for actually just facilitating a debate on Catalan self-determination. Not for supporting it, she took very care. She was a former head of the ANC, but she took very, very seriously her role as Speaker of the Parliament. And as a democratically elected Speaker in a democratically elected Parliament, she let people talk about what was important to the people of Catalonia. But she was indicted by the courts, and that began the process, and now, of course, as a result of those indictments, she is a political prisoner. And I was a member of Parliament at that time, along with Joanna, and I wrote what's called an early day motion, which is where you put down in the daily transcript of the Westminster Parliament motion. Doesn't necessarily get debated, but it puts something on the record. And I put on the record that it was wrong in supposedly democratic Europe in this day and age for the Speaker of a Parliament to face a long prison sentence simply for allowing a democratic debate. Well, a couple of weeks later, I was called in by Alex Salmon, who at that point was our foreign spokesperson. And Alex gets into the room, and you could see he was in one of his moods, storm clouds above him. And he'd just come back from Brussels, where he'd had a meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the Commission. And they'd been chewing the fat, talking about various things. It was part of a maintaining relationship in Scotland and the EU. And before I was going to word out with Juncker said, "Stop, I have just had a phone call from Mario Rajoy in Madrid, complaining about this guy Kerevan and your MPs putting this early day motion down and interfering with Spanish law." And I feel very proud of that I actually managed Seriously though, it is true, we now have political prisoners again in Europe. And in one sense it shouldn't be a surprise to us, because there are political prisoners in all of the so-called democracies. I don't know if you saw a very interesting article recently in The Guardian about political prisoners in the United States, and about Black Panther prisoners, black activist prisoners, who have been in jail for half a century, arrested in the 60s and 70s. And there are several Black Panther internees who have been in solitary confinement in the United States for 50 years. 50 years. And why are they not allowed to mix with other prisoners? Because after 50 years, the American penal service is still worried, the American political elite is still worried, that if those prisoners ever got out to talk to the other prisoners, it would politically infect them. And that's one of the reasons why they put people in jail. It's not just to take away their human rights, it's because they're trying to isolate the ideas. But I've got news for the Spanish state, and I've got news for the American state, and I'm sure you would agree. You cannot contain ideas by putting people in jail. We have to campaign, and what we have focused of the campaign in Catalonia for the next period has to be focus on the prisoners, get the prisoners out of jail, get the debate in Catalonia back to a democratic platform. Now, I've got, since we're in Scotland, another little anecdote. When Chris was my parliamentary assistant when we were working after the referendum, and people started to be arrested and put in jail, particularly the two Geordies. I wrote to the convener of the Scottish Parliament to say there are political prisoners, and it's not a question of you, as the convener of the Scottish Parliament, taking a political stance. But I certainly think it would be good, and Ken McIntosh, his name. I wrote to Ken McIntosh and said, the Speaker of the Catalan Parliament is now been arrested. It is important, therefore, that you, as a Speaker, and can do it privately, do it behind the scenes, but the Speakers of the democratically elected parliaments throughout Europe should be trying to put some pressure on Spain to stop this abortion of democracy. And I had a letter back from Ken who said, no, can't do it. It's too political. That was his opinion. This contrasts massively with the response of John Bercow, the Speaker of Parliament at Westminster. Now, Bercow, I mean, his politics is right-wing as Genghis Khan, right? But Bercow's turned out to be quite a serious figure in Westminster in terms of defending democratic rights. And just before Carme was incarcerated, she came to Westminster. This was after the general election last year, and we took her to have a private meeting with John Bercow. And I explained to Bercow, because he didn't know about the situation. He knew about the Catalan referendum, but he didn't know that Carme was under threat of being sent to prison. And he was shocked. He was frankly shocked. He said, well, I have to do something about this. And he did something which he does, and if you know, is how he bends the rules. When that day's parliamentary session opened in the Commons, Bercow, before he did anything else, said, we have to pause and note the fact that Carme Forcadell, Speaker of the Catalan Parliament, is here and we wish her well. And that was Bercow's way of saying, because it goes out in the media, and it went out to the Spanish television and Catalan television. That was a way of him saying, we recognise Carme Forcadell and her championing democracy, and everyone else. So what we should be doing, now that Pedro Sanchez is temporarily the Prime Minister of Spain. What we should be doing, and because he is a socialist, and there's a Socialist International, I think we should be putting pressure on the Labour Party in the UK to contact other parties in the Social International, including the Spanish Socialist Party, and saying it is no socialist party in power anywhere in Europe should be allowing political prisoners in this day and age, or any time. And I think that's one way in this country we can start to put a little bit more pressure both on the Labour Party here, which has not done enough on the prisoners question in Catalonia, and put some pressure through the Social International on Sanchez.
Thank you. I didn't actually expect to be here today because, of course, today we were supposed to be starting Clara's hearing. So we thought for the next 4 weeks that was us pretty much shut down in Edinburgh Sheriff Court and preparing every night for each day of the hearing. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that Clara's also here. I also want to say thank you so much to all our Catalan friends and people from Scotland who supported us hugely. I don't think the Spanish government expected the response that they saw in response to their attempts to extradite Clara. And I was asked a few days ago how I became involved in representing Clara, how I became involved with the struggle for Catalan independence. And of course, for me personally, it began 1 year ago with the Barcelona attack. I was invited to address the UCE, Universities of Catalonia Conference, as rector of Glasgow University, and it was taking place in Prades last year. And a couple of days before the conference started, I flew into Barcelona. I thought I'd take a couple of days off, and I took a walk on the afternoon of the 17th of August down London's Ramblers. And as I looked down the boulevard, I couldn't but help notice that when I looked across it was a beautiful summer's day. Thousands and thousands of young, old, black, white, Jew, Muslim, Christian, gay, straight, walking side by side. And of course I was back there just recently, and it was exactly the same. And for me it represented, and I said at the time, that it represented for me a sea of humanity. And it's everything that I found beautiful about the city of Barcelona. And I was about to sit down and have something to eat. A waiter approached me, and I decided it was too busy, too crowded, and I thought I would just take my time. And I would also remember my son, who was 9 at the time, Kes, had cried because he wanted to come to Barcelona with me, and I said I couldn't take him. And he said, well, I said, what do you want me to get you? I'll get you whatever you want. He said, the Barcelona Football Club. So I thought at that point, I'll leave Les Ramblers and I'll wander up and I'll find the Barcelona shop. Unfortunately, as I just got up and started to walk, I heard this grinding mechanical noise, and I heard screams, and the noise was something like when you go over, when you go on a fairground ride and you see that you go to the top, and then people start to scream as you go down. The ride, it sort of built up like there was a crescendo. As I turned around, thousands of people were running, screaming, and so I began to run too. And I didn't know why we were running, but literally minutes later I stopped, pulled into the crowd, so prams were being knocked over, people were being knocked over, people were rushing into shops, shutters were being pulled down, and within seconds it was like gunmen and police officers, plainclothes security, and the place was just swamped, and it came to a stop. And according to Boyan, and then literally you heard the sounds of sirens, of ambulances. I think after about 40 ambulances I stopped counting. And 14 people were dead, 140 people were injured. And the victims came from over 34 countries. And I could see where the van had stopped, and at that time I didn't realise because the van was literally where the back of the wall was. Doors were lying open, you could see the airbag had burst open, and the police of course were everywhere on the streets, not knowing if there was another attack pushing us back. I don't think the memories of that carnage or the screams of the mother who caught my attention standing next to me will ever leave me, because I quickly realised I couldn't understand what she was saying, but she was screaming, she was hysterical, and she had a young child who was the same as my youngest child, about 2 years old, pulling at her clothes and saying, "Mama, Mama," and the policeman who was pushing us back with his gun at that point burst into tears, put his arms around her and took her away, and I realised that she'd lost her children, she didn't know where they were. And I remember giving a statement at the time to the media, and I said and I said, as a Muslim, I'm repulsed by the barbaric nature of each cowardly attack carried out in the name of Islam, but I actually have no responsibility, I have no apology to make on behalf of these men. And I also was very conscious that over the years when I spoke out about terrorism, I said that as a Muslim, I don't have any immunity from violence, and it drove home to me that I was in the streets of Barcelona, and the person who carried out this attack didn't actually care that it was Muslims, that there was non-Muslims, Christians, Jews, whoever it was on the street, that there was a purpose to that, and they wanted to drive home, they wanted to drive hatred, they wanted to divide us, and they didn't want to just, shut down our hearts, they also wanted to shut down the borders. And so when I went to the conference a day later, in a complete daze and total shock, and I addressed the conference in Prades, I said to, and I met yourself there at least, and also various other people, and I said at the time that if there's anything I could do to assist anyway. I said lots of people in Scotland who had come previously to me and said you need to go to Catalonia, you need to find out the independence cause. I said I would do my very best, and so of course when 4 months ago I got a phone call from Tricia Marwick, who used to be the presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament, saying, "Can you help Clara? There's a warrant out for arrest." And then Clara phoned. I said, "Well, she needs to phone me, I can't take the instructions." So Clara phoned, I was like, unconditionally, said absolutely yes, and I said I would do whatever I could. And of course on the 1st of October, we watched in Scotland with horror, where the Spanish state used every tactic possible to bully, to blackmail, to harass, to intimidate and to attack. And we saw it on our TV screens, and when people, I mean, I'm astonished, and I agree with George, what he said there in terms of Sanchez's party coming and claiming to be socialist and seeing I watched in horror as Jeremy Corbyn standing with Sanchez and congratulating the fact that, oh, you know, we have a socialist prime minister. And for me, it was like, well, you have political prisoners, you have security forces, you had several thousand Spanish police going in using weapons and attacking people for democratically voting. Something that is enshrined, you know, in international law, the right to self-determination, the right to vote. They weren't doing anything criminal. And when I've had people in this country, including people within the Labour Party and others in trade unions and so-called left-wing organisations, say, well, they did break the law. I said, what law? What law did the Catalan people break? What law did Clara break? What law did those people who presently are in custody in prisons break? And obviously, you know, when you watch those streams, the easiest argument I think we've had in Scotland is, we said, what the people in Catalonia did is something that we did in Scotland that we took for granted. We were able to go into a polling booth and we were able to cast our vote, and we didn't expect to see Theresa May or David Cameron send up 15,000 troops and police officers to batter us over the heads, whether we were voting yes or whether we were voting no, and then to say to our government, well, you know, Nicola Sturgeon's on the run in Belgium, you know, John Sweeney's in another place, and we're going to lock up half the Scottish cabinet. People would have thought that was unthinkable. They thought it was like crazy for somebody to do that. I said, well, that's exactly what did take place in Catalan, the Spanish piece, and we have to stand in solidarity with the Catalan exiles. We have to stand in solidarity with the political prisoners, and I think this is our opportunity to make history, and it should never be left just to Catalonia to do it on their own. And George is right, it's for the Catalans to actually make their own decisions. They've had enough of interference from Spain without anybody else dictating to them what is right or what is wrong, and I think we have to fight. I think we can falter, we can stumble, we cannot afford to fail, and of course there's many questions, and I'm sure people here have many questions, and obviously many mistakes have been made. Mistakes are always made when you're fighting for freedom. Mistakes are always made when you're fighting for independence, and I would just want to close by saying that I think since the dawn of civilization we've seen the tyranny of empires, and I think the history is littered with the ruin of such empires, but each ruin is a monument to mankind's failures, but also to the inherent ability of mankind to fight for freedom and to overcome tyranny. When Franco was in place, he thought his destiny, his legacy would live for 1,000 years. When Adolf Hitler was in power, he thought the Third Reich would last for 3,000 years. And we've seen that again and again, and there is only one message, I think, going forward, is it's never to be afraid to raise your voice for the truth. And I just want to say thank you so much for giving me the honour of representing Clara Ponsati, as well also standing shoulder to shoulder with the Catalan struggle. Thank you.
In 2002, in Gibraltar, the people of Gibraltar held a referendum that was not then permitted by the Gibraltar Constitution because they were terrified that Tony Blair was going to cede sovereignty to the Spanish government. And you can see now, I was always a bit unsympathetic towards Gibraltar before I got into politics, but since Brexit and since the Catalonian situation, I've started to understand why the people of Gibraltar might not be too keen to cede British sovereignty. I'm desperate to get rid of it, but I can understand, I can understand why they, the choice between British sovereignty and Spanish sovereignty, are a bit concerned, having seen what's happened to the Catalonians trying to exercise the sovereignty of the people, which of course is what I, as a Scots lawyer and a Scottish nationalist, believe in. But I'm really, really glad I went on the 1st of October, because as I think I said to some of you last night, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. It was incredible to see what happened that day. It was incredible to witness in a democracy the police beating up people who were simply trying to vote and offering no violent resistance. But it was also incredible to witness the dignity of the people, their determination to vote, and their quiet resistance. And it was very, very, very emotional. I found myself in tears at least twice during the day, and my colleague Fraser, who works for me, who came along with me, who's one of these men who says he never cries, at one point said that he was experiencing tingly cheeks. And I think that's because that was his way of being moved by what we saw. And I think it was really good that there were some, my colleague Douglas Chapman was there as well from the Scottish National Party Westminster Group. And when Douglas and I got back, we immediately prepared a report on what we had seen and sent it to the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and the Scottish Cabinet, so they could have an eyewitness account of what we had seen in Catalonia, so that we were very keen for the SNP to speak out. And of course, the First Minister stepped up to the plate, and she did. When we had our conference in October, shortly after the Catalonian referendum, we invited along Sergei Marcen, the representative of the government of Catalonia in the United Kingdom, and we had a supportive motion passed by acclaim condemning the violence and very much saying that there must be a mediated solution. and a political solution to the desire, the clear desire for a vote on self-determination in Catalonia.
There's a great thing to point out. We don't start from circumstances which we make, we start from circumstances we inherit. I think the Irish would say you wouldn't start from here. But the reason is nothing's inevitable. The reason why I think there will be independence is that in Catalonia and in Scotland, the drive for independence is not simply a product of the popular will. It is that, but it flows from something which it goes even deeper. A crisis of both the United Kingdom state and the Spanish state. And a crisis which is not going to go away. To use a sort of jargon, an organic crisis. What do I mean by that? The UK state is in a state of permanent decline. Remorseless decline, which you have not been able to reverse. Thatcher didn't do it, no one's done it, Blair didn't do it. It leaves behind an archaic democracy. 5 minutes in the House of Commons will tell you, just how bad things actually are in terms of literally the level of democracy which is available to us. Archaic democracy. It leads to a situation where you have the dominance of the City of London and finance, with the spin-off effects, which is essentially a glaring contrast between rich and poor, which is at its height in England, of all places. And it's really noticeable, the level of poverty which exists on matching southern Spain in parts of northern England, and the wealth of places like Kensington, illuminated by the fire in Grenfell, if you recall, literally on the doorsteps of some of the most richest people in Europe, the people living in dreadful housing conditions and precarious jobs, so on and so forth. A state addicted to permanent war in the coattails of the United States. I don't think there's been a year of peace in my lifetime. I might be wrong about that, but I mean, Britain has permanently been involved in some emergency, war, operation, and I could go on. And that crisis is what has created, in its different ways of expression, why people in Scotland have come to the conclusion they need to break. We need to escape the wreckage of the United Kingdom and the wreckage of an economy, full-blooded market forces, and the damage that's been inflicted. In Spain, it's a bit different. Spain is a more backward country. I mean that in the sense that it never had an industrial revolution. And indeed, the place that did have an industrial revolution, Catalonia, it resents. It's a state which is also archaic. It's an exclusionist state. Based, and people never talk about, when they talk about nationalism, they never talk about Spanish nationalism. But it's important to remember that the very foundation of the Spanish kingdom was based on the exclusion of the Muslims and the Jews. And of course, of what happened in the Americas. And that exclusionism runs deep inside the Spanish state, and it's part of the whole legacy of Francoism as well. It's central to Franco, that worshipping of Castilian nationalism, the worshipping of that whole process of the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula, and the sorts of vandalism which were inflicted in Cordoba when Charles V built a dreadful cathedral inside the biggest mosque in Europe. And a refusal of the Spanish state to recognise its own legacy, its own history, what it inherited from Al-Andalus, from the Jews, the Muslims, and so on. They have built up Madrid as being the big financial centre. They've built up as the old utilities that have been privatised. On all figures, it's Madrid which is the richest part of Spain. And that is at the expense of other people in Spain, not just Catalonia, but other people in the south, where the poverty, the unemployment, and so on exists. And going back to that point, if I'm an Andalusian, you shouldn't be cheering on the Guardia Civil because the Spanish state has given you nothing historically, and is going to give you very little just now. You should be supporting the Catalans because if they can get free of Spain, they can pose a different agenda which you could emulate too. And that's exactly what I say to the people during the referendum. I said to people in England, if Scotland gets free, why would you want to stay? If one wing of a prison could escape, why would you stay in solidarity with the rest of the prisoners? You would break free and send a file back inside with a cake, wouldn't you? And if we can be free, we can tell people in England, in communities which have been devastated, actually there is an alternative. An independent Scotland is showing you what that independent is. Encourage us, emulate us, follow us. And that's why I think when we do have a Catalan Republic, I wish it would be a Scottish Republic, I have to say, but if we do have a Catalan Republic, I am confident it's going to happen, and that we're going to build a much more progressive societies which benefit the population and which is not available in either of those two states today.
Thank CommonSpace for having invited me to participate in that panel that was co-hosted also by the branch of our organisation here in Scotland that have been very active and very supportive to Clara, and I would like to thank them also. So I will keep on the title now of the forum, Where Now for Catalan Independence. And as I was preparing for the talk, I was like trying to synthesize and trying to answer to this question, and it's not easy. First thing I would like to say is that it's an obvious thing, is that we have an independentist majority which coexists now with political repression, and that we haven't had in the past. So that adds difficulties to the political process in Catalonia, the struggle for independence in Catalonia. First of all, I would like to mention the role of having political prisoners and exiles. I would like to mention we have 9 political prisoners and 7 exiles, and among them we have the leaders of the main political parties, independentist political parties in Catalonia. We have the president and general secretary of Esquerra Republicana. One is in jail, and the other, Marta Rovira, is in exile in Switzerland. We have, of course, Carles Puigdemont. He's not the president of the party, but he's like the leader, political leader of the other party or the other movement, and he's in exile now. Now back to Belgium, back to Brussels. Overall, we have 7 MPs in jail, 5 MPs in jail and 2 in exile. Some of the political prisoners and exiles were also MPs, but they resigned just to guarantee the majority in the parliament, for instance. Others resigned to try to get out from jail, because some of the reasons that the judge has given to not granting freedom, getting out of preventive jail, is that they keep their ideas and they are still belonging to parties that are still independentist. So some of them try to resign, and that way try to get out from jail, and the judge had other excuses, so they are still in jail and they resigned. So the second difficulty is that the sovereignty of the Catalan parliament has been completely compromised. We had an election officially called by the Spanish government under the application of the direct rule, and there's the political parties that won the election and had in their political programs the restitution of the former government. Didn't do it, couldn't do it. First of all, we couldn't elect Carles Puigdemont as president of the Catalan government. We couldn't elect Jordi Sánchez, which was the former president of the ANC and was the second in the list of Junts per Catalunya, because the judge didn't grant him permission to attend his election. Up to now, and just right now, the judge is suspended temporarily the 7 MPs, 5 that are in jail and 2 that are in exile, from being MPs, so before trial. So we have no respect at all for what people voted, and this is not only their political rights that are vulnerated, but also the rights of the people, the citizens of Catalonia that voted for those MPs, and now those MPs are going to be suspended. And it's very important that we show again the strength of the popular movement in the streets of Barcelona. And I'm glad to say that we will have a guest of honor, a speaker in the demonstration. A common friend of ours, Anna, already asked him a few days ago, and he confirmed me yesterday that Aamer is going to be a speaker in the demonstration in the 11th September. Since the creation of the Catalan National Assembly, it's a movement that is non-partisan. So any people that has a card from one of the diverse independentist parties in Catalonia might belong to the Catalan National Assembly. And the majority of our members, we have up to now, we are 43,000 members that pay every month. The majority do not belong to any political party. And one of the roles of the Catalan National Assembly has been to encourage unity between the political parties, to get the objectives done and to progress and to advance. And I think that we have to continue doing that. And it's urgent that we all sit in a table again and we try to redefine a strategy for independence. And to redefine this strategy, I think that there's something that we haven't been able to do seriously because of political repression, because of tensions between parties, is to analyze the weaknesses and the strengths that we showed in October. And from this political diagnosis of what happened in October, what made us be so strong on the 1st of October to do the referendum and to resist to the violence of the Spanish police, but what made us so weak in the aftermath of the referendum. And once we understand some of these weaknesses, we will be able to redefine a strategy. And then the third thing we have to do is use the legal warfare against Catalan democracy and against Catalan movement of independence as a boomerang against the Spanish state. How? Well, first of all, by denouncing the vulneration of fundamental rights all over, legally at the Human Rights Committee in the UN. That's something that Emerson's another human rights lawyer, British human rights lawyer, is doing. He has already sent the case to the Committee on Arbitrary Detentions and also to the Human Rights Committee for the vulneration of political rights in the case of Puigdemont and Jordi Sánchez for their non-election as presidents. But I think that we have to keep on doing that, and then, for instance, denouncing the suspension of the 7 MPs that are suspended by the judge. We have to denounce that in front of the Human Rights Committee, against the Human Rights Committee of the UN. Also, of course, the Human Rights Tribunal in Strasbourg. We have also to internationalize the trial. This is something that you both said. It is very important that this trial in Madrid, that will start probably in November, will have international observers, and in parallel to the trial, we have to have gatherings, we have to have demonstrations in all European capitals. This is very important for us, that in the same day, for instance, the day that the trial starts, we have demonstrations protesting in many European cities. I think in the short term we are facing a lot of difficulties, but in the midterm, all this vulneration of rights, all the action of the Spanish state is going to be reinforcing the cause of self-determination and independence of Catalonia. So I'm hopeful also that soon we'll see a Catalan republic and also a Scottish sovereign state. I don't know if republic or not, but a sovereign state.